There we go. Welcome back to another episode, my lords, ladies, and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for stopping by. We have a very special treat for you today. We've actually got people joining us from their professions. This is a marvelous treat for you all. So today we're joined by Ruth, who is a legal management consultant with Inspired Star. Now, she's often described as a bit of a chaos-tamer. Ruth is someone who makes full use of her psychology, her business, and her legal training to help law firms become a more efficient and all-round nicer place to work, right? And who doesn't want that, right? Who doesn't want that? In addition, she also mentors neurodivergent legal professionals and resolves disputes using many of the behavioral intelligence techniques that we've spoken about here, and some that we haven't that you might have to get into at a future stage. But today, obviously, we're going to be focusing on neurodiversity as a matter for use with behavioral intelligence. It's quite a prominent thing to be aware of, right? There are an abundance of us neurodiverse folks scattered around the world, and to help those with a neurotypical brain understand why we're so different from why they're so different from neurodivergent people. Being neurodivergent essentially means your brain functions differently to a neurotypical brain. Now, most people jump in and go, it's some kind of better or worse by default because there are all of these kind of categories that go along with it. It's just not the case. Different. There is just different functionalities involved, and that's the clarity with it. Much like skills and any other things in this area, there are things like I can't play the violin, but a violinist could play the violin, right? That's the kind of trade-off we're looking at in this area. And in relation to behavioral intelligence, it means people filter and process information differently in the brain. There may not be a reaction to one single stimulus or even an event in the same way as everyone else, right? Someone might not prioritize social cues. It might lead to different and distinct responses from the individual. Common neurodiversities include the autistic spectrum disorder, ADHD, attention deficit disorders, dyscalculia, dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyspraxia, Tourette syndrome. There's a whole slew of other things that you can think of, and there is a small piece of research that I was aware of from memory training a while back from a lady called Lynn Kelly, who kind of she wasn't involved in them as far as I'm aware, but she popularized the awareness of neurodiversity as a contributing factor towards evolution, because the neurodiverse individuals were aware of more things and more affects to the longevity of the tribe that the neurotypical individuals just wouldn't have been aware of because of how differently their brains function in that particular way, right? So those are the examples that we're going to be looking at here. But that's enough out of me. Everyone's anxious and waiting for everyone else to join in. Bob.
Well, firstly, I think this is a really important topic, and it's something that I've been interested in for a while now. And to my discredit, I suppose, when I think about this, I think about my role in law enforcement and how many people I've come across where I've misread them. And it does sometimes cause me a little bit of consternation but I think that I did try to treat everyone equally. But there you go. But it's not about me, and it's not about you, Ben. It's about
Nope.
Ruth. So,
Yep.
Ruth, welcome, and it's really good to have you here. I've known you for a little while now, and I think this is going to be really a positive experience for all of us, for us doing it, and for you, and for the people who eventually listen to this. So I've got a question for you, Ruth, to start with, if that's okay. And it's, would you be willing to share your story so that we know who is Ruth?
Thank you so much for having me on. It's a real privilege. So I did very well in the neurodivergent stakes. I've got autism, which was diagnosed about 2 years ago. Dyscalculia, again, diagnosed 2 years ago. I was diagnosed as dyslexic when I was in my second year at law school. And I got diagnosed with ADHD a couple of months ago. So
Wow.
I always knew that I was a little bit different, but I didn't know why. And I remember sitting at primary school, sitting down with all of the kids, sit cross-legged on the carpet and sitting there thinking, I feel so alone. I feel really like awkward. And that always sort of comes back to me. I'm thinking, and now I know that I'm autistic. I'm like, oh, I know why now. And so because I have autism and ADHD, it's very interesting that I've got contradictions in my brain. So, for example, I love working from home, for example, but I also love working overseas and traveling, which are two completely different things. I like routine, but I love variety. I absolutely like when I have to go networking, it just totally freaks me out. But then I love meeting new people. What are the other things? I'm really good in emergencies. I used to work in emergency medicine at the Royal Veterinary College in London, and you've got to have a lot of you've got an animal coming in and it's crashing, you have to tube it, you have to give it drugs to revive it. I'm amazing in those situations. But if someone asks me if they can have a chat, like your boss comes up and says, Ruth, can have a chat, I will totally freak out. So there's lots of different things. What else? I don't like drawing attention to myself. So coming on a podcast like this is like totally overwhelming for me. But I'm very competitive. But I think as a lawyer, you'd have to be competitive. So I am a solicitor. A couple of years ago, I did an MBA. I'm also an arbitrator and a mediator. And I've done a variety of business psychology qualifications as well. I speak a bit of Mandarin and French, and so there's lots of things I've achieved in my life where you think, well, actually, someone's dyslexic, they're not very good at reading, dyscalculia, they're rubbish at maths. But yeah, I still get through in life, and I can still achieve what I want to achieve and get where I want to go.
Amazing.
Well, I would say, Ruth, that having known you and met you, you are a force of nature as far as I'm concerned. One thing that's come out of that I don't know if you'd be willing to say a bit more about is how did that work out for you when you discovered you was dyslexic only in the second year of law school?
To tell the truth, I was really upset. I was like, it hit me really, really badly, especially my mental health. I was like, oh, I'm so rubbish. Oh, why can't I do this? And then at the time I was focusing on the negatives of dyslexia. So you probably noticed in this podcast that I'll get my words mixed up sometimes, or I'll start talking and then the ADHD will kick in and I'll get like distracted. And so I found it really, really hard. And then looking back on it, I was very angry because all through school, I was told that I was rubbish. And I've shared things on LinkedIn before about comments that teachers have made in my school books, like, this book is horrible, don't hand in such trash work again. Like, this is like when I was 7 years old or something. And I was like, why didn't they pick it up? Why did nobody notice? And they always told me I was lazy. My writing, I probably got dysgraphia as well, to be honest. My writing's absolutely horrendous. No one can read it. But I was angry because I thought no one noticed. And I went through law school. I went through. I qualified as a veterinary nurse. I went through all those qualifications as well. I went for my first year of law school, and then the reason I got found out was I couldn't work out how to do colons and semicolons to join sentences. I'm still rubbish at it. But I went to study assistance and they asked me to write a sentence and they said, Ruth, are you dyslexic? I said, well, my brother is, because he got diagnosed when he was like 7. And they said, we think you are, come, let's do some tests. And then they discovered it. And I was like, oh, okay. But over the years, I've actually got so many coping strategies now that it's not such an issue. I used to read to when the computer reads out your work to you, that's an absolute godsend. Live scribe pen, it's like records audio and what you're writing at the same time. Absolute lifesaver as a lawyer. It's just so helpful. So it doesn't bother me at all now. And I focus on the positive, saying I'm more creative, I've got more strategic thinking, I'm good at lateral thinking, I'm more analytical. And so I mean, at the moment I'm just coming to terms with being autistic, because that was a real shock, but I'm sure we'll get onto that later.
Totally. I mean, it's an interesting thing that you bring up, because I'm a proud member of the neurodiverse team as well. And with you mentioning languages, I'm studying a few myself, and my Spanish coach, when we're practicing language, like, she'll ask me a question, expecting me to, tell her about my day, or what I've eaten, or whatnot. But she's only asking me about my day, so I'll just say it was fine. And I feel no compunction to address that any further. She's like, come on, say things. I'm like, well, that was the answer to the question. If you want to ask me about the other things. And this kind of not necessarily a misinterpretation, more of a misunderstanding of the behavioral intelligence that goes on between individuals, because it's not about being behaviorally dumb or being behaviorally smart. It's more about being behaviorally aware. I hope these kind of made up metaphors are making sense as I say them. Because a lot of people over my interactions have described me as cold, have described me as distant, or unfeeling, or don't you understand what's happening? And like, well, yeah, I totally get what's happening, but this is how you fix it. Do you want to feel bad or angry about it, or do you want to solve it and move on? When I used to get picked on at school, I've got a large cranium for an individual. Like, the circumference of my head is 27 inches, so it's quite a big head. So I'd get the you fat head, big head, all of this kind of thing, and well, I was like, yeah, I do. Well observed. That doesn't make me better or worse. It's just got observational skills for you, this kind of thing. And those kind of coping skills, and mixed with understanding of both the way neurotypical individuals might see a behavior, and the neurodiverse growing within me sees my own behavior, kind of led to these areas as well. There are some unique interpretations that go on of the neurodiverse, and my experience from that, and you can agree or disagree or add your own thing onto it, comes from performing magic as a teenager. You'd see these guys who would be, making things disappear, or producing animals and all of these kinds of things, and then you're like, oh, how do you do that? It's so clever. And then you tell them how it works, and they go, oh, it's not so clever now, and you're like, well, exactly, because they're just thinking about the problem in a different way to you. They have different information, that's all. So it wasn't about better or worse, it was just different. So I like that we're talking about this. The more awareness that people have of neurodiverse influences towards behavioral interactions, the better understood everyone is, the more productive conversations go by default. So like, what experiences have you had in that area with the misunderstanding of behavioral strategies?
Well, so I was just going to notice something about language. I'm dyslexic, and I find it easier to learn Mandarin Chinese than I do English, which is like, if you give it, I don't know why, my brain can just like interpret and read Chinese, but when you come to reading English, it's really hard. So that's a bit of a random side point, but
Love it.
Well, I would say though, Ruth, that the English language is a very difficult language, because one of the things that you said there, I can remember once talking to someone saying, could you please tell me? And they just said, yeah, and they didn't say anything else. So could you is it gives people an option to just say nothing, doesn't it? And so the English language is, some words have so many different connotations to them, so it is difficult. I should imagine. I don't know. I think you're studying Chinese as well, aren't you, Ben?
I am.
Yeah. So I think it's probably more structured and more concise than the English language, is it?
Well, I mean, Ruth, you can tell us about your. Oh, I've just noticed as well. Sorry to jump to that. We've got two French speakers in the chat as well. We've got Pascal and Julie. Julie is congratulating you on your French journey, Ruth, and they are watching on. Thanks, guys, for joining us. Lovely to see you, kind of, even though I can only see your profile pictures. But yeah, my experience with Chinese, because similar to you, Ruth, my writing is kind of described in the family as looking like a drunk doctor's with brain damage. That's kind of how it looks. I mean, maybe that's a little unfair on all drunk doctors with brain damage, but there we are. I found that with Chinese, it was easier to wrap my understanding of patterns to the symbols, and it was easier to understand the simplistic notion of verbs, because there's no conjugation of verbs, or at least very, very minimal. And that was an insight to the learning practice, that things are understood from context. That's what I enjoyed about it. I struggle tonally because I'm naturally quite deep. So like when I have to do 4 different tones as I talk, I feel like I'm singing, and then I get a bit self-conscious, and then it sounds different, and I worry that I'm going to wind up sounding like I'm in Rush Hour 2 telling people that I want to do something else wildly inappropriate with some kind of barnyard animal or something like that. That's a joke from Rush Hour 2 if nobody's seen it, by the way. But yeah, let's look at a couple of the main traits of the differences between neurotypical and the neurodiverse. Let's take ADHD for a start. And the notion of distractibility, right? In your experience, Ruth, do people tend to find that you are distracted easily, or are you more choosing where to focus? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I think sometimes when people see someone who's got ADHD who's distracted, they think, oh, they're bored, or they're not interested in what I'm actually saying, which might be the case, but it's because their brain is trying to focus all of this information coming in at once, and they're like, okay, because we don't have so many filters in our brain, it's how it processes it all. So they're more sensitive to external stimulus. So if they sort of I was saying earlier, we've got RAF Fairford nearby. We're going to have typhoon bombers flying over, and I might go like that and get distracted because that's maybe more interested in talking to you guys. No, I'm joking, but it's like it'll be like, oh, shiny, new, and then dopamine hits in, and you'll go off in that direction. But then also we hyper focus. So I actually noticed this more in lockdown when I was working from home, because I'm sitting in the office and I've got quite young children. Well, they're not young now, but they were then. And they come in, mummy, I want you to cook my dinner for me. And it would distract me. And I feel myself getting really angry. And I'm thinking, oh, what's going on? And this is before I knew I had ADHD and autism and everything. But I now know that when I'm hyper focusing and I just want to get something done, if anyone distracts me, then I'll totally lose what I was doing. And then you describe it as, when you have to turn your computer on and off when it freezes, it takes a little while to get back to your page. That's how the brain works for me. Is if I've been hyper focusing, then I won't get distracted. So although it says ADHD is deficient, like attention deficit, it's more, where are you actually focusing that, because you can actually be really, really focused and not get distracted at all. So it's a bit of bit of a weird one. I don't know if they'll ever change the name of it, but it's how you focus rather than, yeah.
Yeah, and like it's not got quite as much of a ring to it with overabundance of attention in one particular area, hyperactivity disorder. You know, that's kind it's kind of a it's kind of a mouthful. But one of the things that you brought up there, you know, it connects to what's actually happening in those areas. It's a sensitivity to external stimulus because of how your brain is processing the information. It's so many thoughts, so many disconnected things, so many things knocking you from what you want to focus on, or so many areas that are pertinent to what you're talking about. I know when I'm getting involved in you know, something that I'm particularly passionate about, I'll start speaking quicker and quicker, and then my tongue kind of trips over itself because I have like 12 things I want to tell you all at the same time. It kind of means that by default it's more likely that distractions occur to kind of give yourself a breather from all that noise. But it's true that neurodivergent people can become easily bored when dopamine levels are low. You know, it's just if we are in a dopamine surplus moment, leave us to it. Leave us to it. We've had a couple of questions come in. If we're all open to that,
Yeah, sure.
Marvelous. So Pascal actually says it's a superpower, not a weakness, of which I think we're all in agreement. Maybe a little bit biased, but we're all in agreement. He says, Ruth, do you have difficulties to understand how to behave in any particular context that you're in as a result of your many diverse I don't know, tendencies, if that's the right word?
I've never really thought about it, but only being diagnosed with autistic and ADHD very recently, I've masked my whole life. And so that means that I've learned from a very, very young age how to fit in and how not to stand out from the crowd. So I've described as high masking. And so I think I've learned that you sort of have to do a quick scan of the room, seeing what everyone's up to. But I've got a bit of a funny story. So when in my first job, I worked for one of the top law firms in the country, and I had a secretary, and I said to her, because I'd come from the veterinary profession, remember, so it's very, very different from law. And I said to my secretary, I said, why is it everyone's so boring? And she said to me, she goes, Ruth, don't worry, you'll become like that. And she was right, because I actually to fit in, I had to be serious, I had to be quiet, I had to just sit down and do my work. Whereas the veterinary profession, we was playing jokes on people and having absolute laugh. But obviously you wouldn't be able to do that nowadays. I'm not going to tell you what we got up to, but it was a lot of fun. And most of my close friends are from the veterinary profession because they're more, I could be myself and I didn't have to put this mask on. Whereas in the legal profession, you have to be professional. You have to, like, obviously work for the best for your clients. And so I'd love to be able to do that in more of a way that's me, rather than me having to constantly adapt to the situation. And do you know what I mean? It's quite a difficult balance. So I don't know, I think it's because I am high masking and I've learned how to behave in different situations. But then also when I'm at home, I'm always joking around. My husband thinks I'm really witty. And whereas at work, I'm really very, very quiet, very shy, very serious, because it's just, I don't know, I've just learned over the years that I get around better behaving like that rather than people be telling me off for making jokes and being silly.
We all wear masks, though, don't we?
We do.
We all wear masks. And when I'm working, that's what I say to people, is that everyone wears a mask, and just to respond to that person as they want to be, because it depends. And I think the problem might be for you with some sort of situations you're in. People will see that you're wearing the wrong mask, or that the mask doesn't fit too well.
Yeah.
And that can have a detrimental benefit because of the way humans are. We always see these things as negative, don't we, rather than positive. I think, and something which I greatly advocate, is just people are just people, just accept them as people. If that person presents as that person on that day, just go with it. That's who they want to be. That's who they're comfortable being. And that's difficult when you're in, say, a job interview or a police interview or anything like that. But in general, that would make the world a much better place, I think, if we could just accept people that that's how they are on that day.
Yeah. Show me where to sign for that belief. I'll sign up. That's a that's a cult I'm happy to join. But it connects back to what we were talking about earlier. It's not different. Sorry, it's not deficient divergence. It's not better or worse. It's just different. It's just different versions of the same kind of neurological makeup that goes on in here. And like one of the other ADHD traits, a little bit on the autistic spectrum as well, but with hyperfocus. And like I want to say to neurotypical people, you're telling me you never hyperfocus? Why do you reference yourself as being in the zone? Why do you reference your, I'm in what's the term? Flow state. Is the kind of wellness term that came out of that area. So it happens to everyone, these ideas. But one of the things that I do want to bring up is the notion of overthinking. And that's I mean, arguably nobody does overthinking quite like the neurodiverse, but that is also a term that goes to the neurotypical as well. So by default, everyone overthinks. And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day about the notion of overthinking, and we kind of settled on the fact that overthinking is awesome. I can get so much done. I can get so many creative ideas going. I can solve all of these problems. I can be aware of so many things. The concept of overthinking being like a bad thing, a worrisome thing, is when it's not got control around it, when it's just going. And we use the phrase "circle in the bowl." When that area comes up, that is when there is the possibility of time wasting, because you might be considered as daydreaming. You're not doing anything because you don't have any control over it. But just on the other side, there would be the neurodiverse that, again, personal experience, I'm sure you probably confirm the same as well, thinking about every possible risk, every possible advantage, every possible disadvantage, all of the solutions that fall away within that. Arguably, I built my job around that very thing. But this is why there is value to overthinking, would you say, because of that kind of over awareness? Would that be right?
Definitely. I mean, I think that's why G6, MI5, MI6, particularly like neurodivergent thinkers, because they're big picture thinking, saying, right, this risk, this could go on, this could happen. And also it's great if you're a lawyer because you've thought about everything. And some people say, oh, you've really thought it, but actually you're going to be prepared. What was I going to say about overthinking? Sometimes it does cause decision paralysis because you've thought about everything so much. You're like, I've got too many options now. Which one do I go for? How shall I weight the risk on this? And how shall I weight the risk on that? And so it can cause some problems like that. The reason why I thought I might have ADHD is my brain is like a hamster in a wheel. It goes round and round and round and round and round, and I can never shut it off. And like even like at the weekends, I'm like going around cleaning the house and I'm like doing the washing, and I've forgotten I've put the washing on, and I go make a cup of tea, but I don't make a cup of tea because the doorbell rings, and then I go back to the kettle 5 like hours later, and but it's like constantly churning, and you never know what's going to happen next. And I think, again, with overthinking, I think it also can cause a lot of stress and anxiety as well, because you will then focus on something and then you think about all the things that might happen. Say if your boss has called you into the office saying, I want to see you 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, and you're thinking, why does he want to see me? What have I done wrong? And then you're overthinking. It'll cause you a lot of anxiety, which actually, if you were neurotypical, you would say, oh yeah, we'll see them in the morning. But so it can be double-edged sword for that one.
Yeah.
I think what
So
you've described as well would be, well, I understand why neurodivergent people are so, like you say, MI5, MI6, the intelligence community and the investigative community, because what
Mm.
you described could be described overthinking as critical thinking and as an investigative mindset, collect everything and then narrow it down. And that
Yeah.
would seem to be, and would it be fair to say they're more cognitive skills, they're not emotional skills? They're, that's where I think neurodivergent people excel in those sort of roles, where it is more about logic
Mm.
and that type of approach to things. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Yeah.
yeah. I just call back to some of the comments that we've got as well. Julie says that you Ruth, you've answered already a lot of the questions that she has around this area. So thank you for that. Pascal makes the observation that he thinks like that sometimes, but it makes him think of the song, "The wheels on the bus go round and
Yeah.
round, round and round, round and round." Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, we could look at so many of the traits, whether it be the executive functions, the co-occurring conditions that happen, sensory overloads. I had a moment like that in the gym the other day. Banging headache, and there was a. I'm not picking on CrossFit. He was a CrossFitter, but I don't know his name. There was a CrossFitter in the corner, and he's picking his weights up, and he's just dropping them. And every bang, I'm
Oh,
going, and it's just this constant little peck inside my head the whole time. And my wife was talking to me. I'm like, I'm gonna go over and say something. I'm gonna go over and do something. She's no, sit down. He's just working out. He doesn't know that you're reacting to the noises. I'm like, fair point, fair point. But all of this is to say, whatever behavior is presented in an individual, diverse or not, is a link to activity in here. So if we can worry a little less about good or bad, unless your role is to decide who is better for the task, then you do that common business practice of aces in their places. Right? If somebody's better at this than the other person, fine. I wouldn't put a creative thinker around numbers all day. That just doesn't make sense. Diverse or not, that doesn't kind of ring true in
mm.
that area. So when we bring to the end our discussions, just because I'm aware of the time as well. One of the things that we've been kind of wrapping up is like a final thoughts, uh, almost a bit like Jerry Springer in that area, but with less arguments. So I'll get the ball. I'll get the ball rolling, like all meetings do. In that, my name is Ben, and I'm a nerd. They say admitting it is the worst case, is the first step on the journey. No, it is to acknowledge that I would love for more people to be aware of all of these different divergences that go on in our behavior, and have, when I say "our," I mean humans, not just "our," um, and have all of the accepted understanding for the knock-on effects in other areas. That's, if I could wave a magic wand and have that happen, it would be glorious. But the one thing I would like to kind of make more popularized is the idea of space for all people, divergent or not. I would argue that divergent folks probably need space a little bit more to gather ourselves together, um, as a benefit towards productive conversation. If somebody needs a moment, it's not necessarily going to harm the flow unless you acknowledge that it is
Mm.
going to harm the flow. So if we lay a concept for all of us down, what are the main ideas that we'd like to leave people with when it comes to neurodiverse behavior?
Um, I think for me is that for people to be kinder. Quite often, like for example, I was in a partners meeting a little while ago, and they said, "Oh, you so and so's on the spectrum," and I was like, "Oh, well, we shouldn't have said that for a start." But it just shows the attitudes of people because so before I got diagnosed, when I didn't know about autism, so obviously that's why I didn't know that I was, but I'd always seen in the media that you have people who have maybe more learning difficulties and they don't mask so much. And so I didn't see myself as that, but then when you delve down and saying, well, you have problems with this, and this, I'm like, oh yeah, that's definitely me. But it's so there's a misconception of what's portrayed in the media sometimes and what's the actual reality. And for example, there's probably hundreds of lawyers who are neurodivergent and they don't even know it because they're like me, they've seen this thing in the media and they think, oh, a autistic person's like this or an ADHD person's here, like jumping around, but that's not it. And so I think there needs to be more awareness within the world, really. And then often people get described as snowflakes. They're saying, oh, you say the lights are too bright, or you say it's too noisy, or they're like, yeah, but that's because we're like highly tuned to these things. And it's not us being difficult, it's not us being snowflakes. It's like a legitimate concern. I think sometimes, like when you ask for reasonable adjustments, quite often they'll get refused. And I'm sitting there going, but that's a really simple thing for you to do. It will like transform my life in the workplace, but people don't accept it. And you're like, okay. So I think there just needs to be more education and understanding and more people speaking up. Like when I first found out, I couldn't find any law firm senior leaders who are neurodivergent because people don't tell anybody. And I found loads now, which is great because more people are coming out the woodwork. But so I really thank anyone who's in a senior role for coming forward and saying, actually, I'm neurodivergent and supporting those. So more role models in any profession is always a good idea as well. So yeah.
Bob?
Final thought for me is that every day is a learning day. I like to think that I know a little bit about human behaviour, and it's what I do. It's what I teach other people. But I know so little, and I think one of the things that atypical people, especially in the field that I work in, is that everything is a positive. Everything is so distinct. This is the truth. This is what this person is thinking. This is what this person is doing. I'm not afraid to say that I don't believe that. I'm wrong a lot, and I know this one. I'm not afraid to say when I don't know, and I think that's and I don't know enough. Today when we was doing this podcast, I said to Ben that I need to be a support rather than the lead because I don't know, because it's not me. Although there are certain traits that I think we all have. And like yourself, Ruth, I'm always been an outsider, and I've worn masks my whole life, and some of them are fitted better than others. But it's been great to have you on here, and I hope that people see this will want to reach out to you, because I think you've got a lot to offer people with advice and coaching and whatever, especially companies who need to be better aware of these situations. So thank you very much for coming on. And I know it's not within your comfort zone as such, but it's been great. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me.
Genuine pleasure. Wouldn't have been the same without you. So guys, Pascal, Julie, and everyone else that's been watching, thanks for joining in. Pascal saying at the end, in relation to what we were talking about of the misunderstandings, that's why personal behavioural repertoires exist, and it's such a salient point. Pascal, again, it was really interesting. Ruth, thank you for being here. Julie, thank you so much. Thank you, guys. And this is really what we're looking to do. We're looking to strengthen our growing community of behavioural intelligence analysts, almost, right? That's why we're going to talk about all things related to this area, because you guys will be able to go and use it in areas of the world that we can't. And we'll come back here and we'll talk about it. We'll all talk about what worked, what didn't, why, what's going on, and really open this whole thing up so there are, well, less YouTube experts in the world. But we'll save that argument for another day. Until then, guys, we're going to love you and leave you. If you haven't already, make sure that you are subscribed to the podcast itself to follow along with more the Deductionist Behavioural Intelligence meetups that we're going to be doing. There's like 20 of them in the bag so far, so you've got a lot of material to get through as well. You can follow along everywhere that podcasts are available. And we'll gather some information for how you can follow Ruth's journey as well, more succinctly. That'll be in the description box, wherever that is below when this goes out live. But again, guys, don't be strangers. Any questions at any time, make sure you're adding them into the comments, and we'll gather them up and answer them all in due haste. In due course, due haste, one of the two. So with that in mind, we're going to love you and leave you, and we'll see you again very soon.